Okay. Welcome along, everyone. I think people are still coming on in. Good to see some familiar faces and familiar names pop up. Welcome along to, isn't our first ever live Q&A, but the first of this kind. This is a more generalistic view of our global race series. So people that are in this call are either people that are signed up to do a race with us or they're interested. A bunch of first timers, and there's a lot of experience in this group as well. I'm joined by an expert panel. We've assembled a crack team of runners and race directors to help with our questions this evening. I'll let them introduce themselves in a second. But my name's Kris King. I'm one of the owners and race directors at Beyond the Ultimate. I've been with the company since 2015. And chances are, if you're on one of the Global Race Series races, it'll either be myself or Adam Kimble, who will introduce himself in a second, that will be directing your race. Beyond the Ultimate has been operational since 2012, well-established, well-formed company. We like to think of ourselves as leaders in the industry of making wonderful and weird events in really remote areas. So if you're kind of signed up with us for the first time and you're due to race with us, I'm pretty sure you're going to have an amazing experience soon. And then people that are here that have been with us, it's great to have you along again. And I'm sure you'll offer some wisdom into the side chat bars and things like that when they come up. So we're going to talk about the Global Race Series this evening. That's the 4 races in the series. So ice, jungle, mountain, and desert. We of course have the Ranges Ultra and Highland Ultra, and some of the generalistic topics that we'll discuss today will cross over and be useful for them. But our time is going to be spent this evening on the Global Race Series. So I have got pre-submitted questions from you all, and this will be recorded and sent out as well to the people that couldn't make it. But there is a side chat bar as well. So if you want to open a discussion, if you have a particular question or a burning question that comes up, feel free to add it into the chat bar there. Jenny will be monitoring that as well. If the chat gets quite busy and starts populating quite quickly, if you do have a question, it might be good if you put the word question in capitals before your question, and that will just allow us to search through the scroll quickly and make sure that your question is not missed, especially as more people start entering the group. Anyway, I will stop waffling and I'll introduce our expert panel. So these guys between them have done our races. They've been there, seen it, done it. They've coached a number of people in different sports as well as ultra running, and they are an eternal bank of wisdom for you to draw upon this evening. So what I'll do is I'll get them to introduce themselves, and the first up I think we'll do is Adam. So Adam Kimble. Hi, mate.
What's up, Kris? Thank you. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just introduce yourself, and then I think Kristina, if you go after Adam.
Yeah, so my name is Adam Kimble. I do a lot of things related to ultra running, but the primary things are I'm a professional ultra runner, running coach, race director for BTU, and a few other things. But everything in my life revolves around running long distances. I've been running ultras since like 2014, professionally since 2016. And I ran my first BTU race in 2018, the desert, and then I directed my first BTU race in 2019. That was both the desert and the jungle. And I'm very familiar with all the races, even the ones that I haven't been to personally. But the desert is definitely the one that I know like the back of my hand, and I love very much. But yeah, I love this organization. I was immediately drawn to the people and the sort of ethos of the organization. And for those of you that don't know, just to give you a little background story, the way that I got sort of like tied into Beyond the Ultimate was back in the day, 2017, Kris and I ran together across Great Britain. We did John O'Groats to Land's End and summited the 3 peaks along the way. Became besties, and then we've never looked back. So so anyway, I've been a huge fan of the community for a long time, and I think that the stage this is what I tell people. I say the ultra running community is better. Like it's kind of like breaking it down into more niche stuff. But the ultra running community is better than the running community, and the stage racing community is better than the ultra running community. If you were to break it up like that, it's just that you get to know people so much more intimately when you're without devices in the middle of nowhere, suffering in whatever environment it is that you choose. So if you haven't done one of these races, highly recommend it. And I look forward to seeing some of you out there.
Thanks, Adam. Kristina?
All right, I guess it's my turn now. My name is Kristina Madsen. I'm a professional ultra runner. I'm from Denmark. I've done all the 4 races in the Global Race Series, starting with the Jungle back in 2016. That was actually my first experience with multi-stage racing, and I loved it. So after the Jungle, I quit my job as a teacher, and I've been living as a professional runner ever since. So I've done the desert. I've been lucky to do it twice. And I met Adam the first time I did it, I think back in 18, right? And a funny story was I was lucky to get the course record. Then someone came the year after and took it. And then Kris invited me back. And due to COVID, yeah, the desert had to skip some years, and I got to be back last year. And so I did the desert last year, I did the ice this year, and I just finished the mountain ultra in Kyrgyzstan. So I've done all of them. So hopefully I can answer some questions, especially if someone is interested in doing all 4 races. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Kristina. She's been quite humble there as well. She's the first person to complete the series. So yeah, she is a badass for anyone that is looking to finish races. She knows how it's done. Jon, want to introduce yourself, mate?
Hey everybody, my name's Jon Belton, as you can see on the screen, and thanks Kris for putting me in at the end of 2 professional runners, because I'm not a professional athlete. Okay, so sorry for letting you all down there. However, I am a fitness coach and have been since for 23 years. I've worked in the fitness industry. My experience with Beyond the Ultimate it was placed on me by a friend, quite aggressively. He asked me to do the Ice Ultra with him a number of years ago, or last year in fact, and I have done some stage races in the past, and done some, I did, races in Ireland. We did the highest peak in every county, stuff like that. None of it as glamorous as what the other guys have done. What I can bring to the party today is the basic kind of fears that people have, the questions people have around these races. I've been that kind of nearly full-time novice going into this. I'm absolutely obsessed with the experience of what the race brings, not just from a running point of view, but there was a great line on a YouTube video that someone who completed the Ice Ultra said it was about finding the edge. And for me, that was very gripping and really gave me a good understanding as to what to expect when I did my first race. You find a lot of edges about yourself that you don't realize exist. You find a lot of edges about your physical and mental capacity, which, if you're in this room and you've gotten this far, then that's possibly something that you're already interested in. And that's what I'm really into about the races. I love trying to break myself and getting as broken as I can, and then realizing I'm nowhere near broken. And then I think we all have that capacity to achieve these great events. I work as a personal trainer full time, and as excited as I am about doing races, getting a client and training them from zero to completing one of these races would be a big goal for me. So yeah, questions today possibly around coaching, around the basic stuff, but looking forward to this, and I think I'm going to learn a huge amount myself.
Thanks, Jon. So yeah, it's important to remember that we've got our expert panel here, but they weren't always experts. They started these things as a novice as well. And so when you're asking these questions, no question is too stupid. No question is too simple. We're here to make sure that we can answer every question, from anyone that's never done one of these things before to someone who might be looking at winning these things. We can help you through. So that being said, we're going to start firing through some questions. Like I said, we're going to keep them as general as possible to talk about the whole series as a whole. But what we might do towards the end is just spend 10 minutes on each race quickly with very specific questions and fire through. So if you're here interested in the desert, we will probably have some desert related questions on ice and so on. But we're going to stick to general questions first of all. We've had some great questions in. We'll try and get through them all. So this first question is actually about the whole series and the series finisher. We've had 2 series finishers, Kristina being one of them, Russell Jackson being the other. We haven't, as of yet, had anyone complete the series in a calendar year. It's yet to be done. So the first question that comes in, and we'll have you answer it first, Kristina. If you were to do them in a year, what order would you do them in?
Oh, is my mic on? Yeah,
Oh,
it is.
you're good.
Well, I think I have 2 answers for that. If I was to do them now with my experience, I would do the mountain ultra first, then the desert, then the ice, then the jungle, because there is just a short amount of time from the jungle to the mountain ultra, so a short time to recover. But I do think the mountain ultra is one of the hardest races, so don't underestimate. It's just 200 kilometers, and some of the other races are 250. It is a long race, a lot of elevation, a lot of technical terrain, not to mention the altitude. The mountain ultra is really, really tough. So if I were to do them now, I would do the mountain first. But if you're kind of new into this multi-state self-sufficient world, I would kind of ask myself, do I perform well in the heat? Do I perform well in the cold, for example? And if you do perform well in the cold, I think you should start with the easy one, the ice ultra, if you like, or do well in the cold. On the other hand, if you like the warm weather, I think you should start in the deserts, so you can kind of, get to know what this game is about. So I think that would be my answer to the question.
Great answer. Adam, what about you?
I'm a purist when it comes to stuff like this, so I would do them in order: ice to desert. I technically like a year is a year, but like to me, doing it in the actual same year, I think is the way to do it. But again, just a purist. Apologies to those that aren't.
John?
Oh, I haven't completed the other 2 yet, but like now I'm going, oh, no one's completed them on a calendar year, so it's got my juices flowing. I'll come back to you on that one in a year's time, maybe.
Jon just signed up for all of them right then.
So yeah,
Me too.
Yeah, it hasn't been done yet. People have tried, and they've started in different ones, and they've attempted to finish in different ways. Just through, it is a hard ask. Like Kristina says, there's little recovery time between each one. I think the quickest order to do them, so you can do them before a 12. If you wanted to not do calendar month and do the quickest, I think starting on the desert would be your quickest way. Is that right? Desert. That would be 9 months. Who knows? You'd think the RD and owner would know that answer. I think that's right. Anyway,
Kris,
yeah.
just curious. There aren't there 2 people that were 1 away and didn't finish one of the series? Wasn't that how? Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
The people have come close. Okay, so this one is about training. If you were giving advice to someone that has not done a multi-day before, they're very early on in their career. This might be hard for the person that answers last. I'm going to ask each panelist to give me 2 top tips for what you would tell and give someone that is looking at training for one of these things for the first time. Now, Jon, you get to go first, and then as we go, hopefully Kristina and Adam can add to your points.
So sorry, just to get that, a complete novice, someone who's run a marathon.
Novice. Yeah, they might have run a marathon, but they're looking at doing their first ultra, the first multi-day. What are the top 2 tips that you would give them?
Success leaves a trail. So speak to somebody who has completed the race before, and get as much advice as you can from John Shields, basically. that is really important. But decide if you're a competitor or a participant, and then if you're a competitor and you want to get in there and do well, speak to someone who's done very well in the race before. But if you're just a participant, I know it's essentially like it's a completely different experience to get in there and speak to someone about, how to be comfortable throughout the race, what snowshoes are more comfortable than the others, or, how much food you're going to actually need versus how much food you think you need. So I would say that little bit is like establishing what type of athlete you are. First of all, is really, really important. Secondly, it's don't underestimate the importance of going slow in your training and getting used to just striding. You know, you think it's about the long runs, it's about time on your feet. That's so important.
Great, thanks, Jon. Kristina?
Yeah, same as Jon. I think I would definitely be slow in your training as well, because you will be going slow at the race. So make sure to start your training long before the race, so you can have a slow progress, but like a stable progress, and then be consistent with your training. So slowly each week, maybe have a recovery week every 4th week, but slowly increase your miles every week. And about 80% of my training is slow training. And it works really well for me. It works well for the athletes I'm coaching. So yeah, same as Jon. Be physical ready. Don't start 2 or 3 months before. Also, like be prepared on how to pack your bag, because for many of us, it's a lot of extra kilos you put on your back. So you need to train for that as well. Don't start with 10 kilos on your back. Just start slowly putting on 3 kilos, maybe 4 kilos, 5 kilos. And when you get close to the race, try to pack your back as light as possible, because it actually really matters, especially if there's a lot of elevation on the race you're doing. The weight of your bag matters a lot. So I think that would be like my 2 advice.
Great, thank you, Kristina. Adam?
Yeah, 3 things immediately came to mind. Number 1, specificity. Whatever race you're training for, do everything in your power to train specifically for that race. So a couple examples for the desert: get in the heat as often as you can, whatever that means. If you don't live in a place that has heat, go and get sauna training in, those sort of things. And then the ice, you might have never run in snowshoes before. Buy snowshoes and then find a surface where you can run in them, sand, whatever. Like, the point is to get used to the kit and the gear you're going to be using, because if you show up at the race and don't have any familiarity with that, you're probably going to run into some problems. Number 2 is work on back-to-back training days. So stage race, all of these races are 5 stages. So at least get a couple of 2 or 3 day back-to-back longer runs in your training buildup, just to get accustomed to what that feels like. Because half of what makes a stage race so difficult is that you wake up 2, 3, 4 days in and the body is sore and really feeling it. And the more that you can simulate that in training, the better. And then the last thing is train with your pack. You don't have to do it all the time. In fact, I think doing it all the time is detrimental, but don't show up at the race not having worn your pack and then put on this heavy pack and think, wow, this is like really hurting my shoulders because I've never worn this before. That might sound funny, but a surprising amount of people do that. So just make sure that you, even if it's once a week, throw the pack on, throw some weight in there, and just get used to what it feels like running with a heavier pack that you wouldn't normally run with in training.
Great. Awesome tips, and we could keep going with that. We might just come back. We'll end up, I think, discussing things in or around that with some questions that are coming up. So thank you, guys. We will move on to packing. Kristina mentioned the importance of the backpack. One of the things about self-sufficient races, you will be carrying everything that you need for the 5 days. The keen amongst you will know that we've released race packs recently, brand new, all singing, dancing race packs that look super sexy. Jenny, who is on this call, has been fundamental in making them, and Simon, who I don't know if he's on this call or not, have been slaving away for weeks and months and years making those look as beautiful as we can to make sure that you can be as prepared as possible with your kit. Now, the backpack is one of those things that if you've not done a multi-day before can be the most daunting thing. However, with a bit of research and a bit of mentorship and finding a trail of success, like Jon said, it can be something that is made easier. Let's do a similar thing with backpacking. It's quite interesting because I can tell from being a race director for all three of these athletes, they all have different styles of packing. So it's going to be quite interesting to hear their views on it. Kristina has a minimalist approach. Jon has a maximalist approach, and Kimble likes to take the odd luxury. So yeah, so Kristina, if you was to give a couple of tips for people packing their bag for the very first time on a multi-day, where would you start?
Well, if you do race with Adam, he always has a hairbrush. So don't bring a hairbrush if you race with Adam.
Technically, Kristina has cheated at some of her races because I've let her borrow my hairbrush. Really, she should have carried it then the next day, but you know, whatever.
I think you had a foam roller as well. Well, let me start with that. I will definitely not bring a hairbrush or a foam roller. Like packing for me comes in different steps. So I start with having everything on from the kit list. And if you haven't done a multi-stage race before, a self-sufficient multi-stage race before, it actually takes some time to find out where to buy this stuff. And especially on the medical kit side, it can be, you know, pretty tricky to get the right bits, but when you have them, you know, you can reuse them race after race. So I like spreadsheets. So I put the minimal list in the spreadsheet. I put in the weight of each item. I tick it off when I have it. And then I try to go through each item to see how I can minimize the weight. And yes, I do cut off, like, what do you call that? Washing marks in the clothes. I do try to like have a look at my rucksack and cut off, you know, the what's the English word, like the lashes.
Toggles.
It's not
Yeah.
lashes.
Yeah, toggles. That's fine.
Which I don't need. So often I don't bring much more that, you know, more than is on the minimum list. And I think many people have another style, but I bring as little as possible. But it's also because, you know, I'm not the biggest person as well. So having a big rucksack, you know, is a lot of percentage of my body weight that I put on. So it's really important for me to race light. But like my technique is to take every item I put in the bag and try to have a look at it and see how I can make that item as light as possible. And I do that for two reasons. So the total amount of the bag is as little as possible, but it's also very important for like a type of person like me to, when I do get to the starting line, you know, I know in my mind I have packed my bag like 100% correctly. I don't need to worry about should I have brought this, should I have taken like another brand or another item. I know with myself, I'm 100% sure I am prepared and my bag weighs as little as possible. So I like it that way.
Right, and I'll ask you, for example, weights of your race if you can remember them. I'm sure you do at the end. Adam, can you add to Kristina's points on your style?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty similar to Kristina. I like to keep things as light as possible with a few exceptions. I just believe for myself, there's a handful of things that make me more comfortable during the race that I think improves my performance at the multi-day races. And two quick examples are Kristina already referenced one of them. I have a like small stick roller that you can use to like roll out your legs and muscles. And believe me when I say that the multi-day races that I've run, I bring it every time, and I just stick it in the side of my pack. It's pretty light, but I mean, it's unnecessary weight to some people. But to me, I'm like using it around camp, keeping myself feeling good. And then like, I think 90% is an underestimate, but let's say 90% of other participants will ask me to borrow it at some point. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe that I have to carry the burden on this. But it's just one of those things that, you know, like, to me, it's worth the wait. And then another example is I always, and again, it's light stuff, but I always have a pair of clothes in my pack that I don't wear during the race. Or not that I don't wear at all, that I only wear back at camp. There's something about like getting out of your sweaty, wet clothing and having something that, now the jungle might be a place where you wouldn't do this because everything is wet always. But in the other locations, I just like having, there's something that like, it's like a mental trick for me, you know, putting on a fresh pair of clothes, even if my body's dirty, is a mental boost. And so I make very calculated risks in terms of adding weight that I don't need, that I think is going to mentally boost me during the race. Otherwise, I take a pretty minimalistic approach. I think the one thing that I would say to people that maybe haven't done this before is, if you are going to focus on cutting weight, I think that's a smart move. The one thing that I'd be careful about doing that with, or just maybe careful is not the right word, just be meticulous in how you go about it, is the food, because you don't want to short yourself calories. So you want it to be as light as possible. But if you're going to overdo something, food is the thing, because throughout the week, everybody just gets hungrier and hungrier as you continue to run longer and have less to go off of. So just make sure you don't short yourself on calories.
Can I quickly say something to that? Like about the food, if you weigh like 55 kilos like I do, you know, you don't need like as much food as Adam might does, or like a bigger person. So I think, you know, that should, you know, you can consider that as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Kristina. Jon?
Yeah, so my pack, obviously second to all the mandatory bits. I can trim everything down as best I can. But then my pack's all about recovery. So as Adam said, like, I like getting into some sort of dry, fresh clothes of some description each night. I'll also have like a little routine where I'm either taping up feet, working on feet, putting Tiger Balm on. I'll bring a very small, like a lacrosse ball. I'll also bring like voodoo floss out my calves, floss out my ankles, floss out my knees. And then the rest of it's all about food. And like, you know, for me, it's like, I'm okay being heavier for the first day or two and eating enough, because it's a 5-day race. I feel like carrying a little bit of extra food, once it's not excessive, getting it in, and starting day 3 feeling strong and fresh and you know, like you've eaten enough is so much more important than being a half kilo or a kilo lighter on day 1. I'm not the biggest by any means of guys out there, but I definitely need to eat. Like I track a lot of what I consume on a daily basis, and on an average it's like, you know, 2,500 calories, 3,000 calories, whereas like in the ice I had 2 11,000 calorie days. So like my expenditure was huge, and yeah, it's for me, recovery is so important for those races. Every little thing you do is about keeping your body from breaking down. It's going to break down, but slowing down the rate that it breaks down at.
Great.
Chris,
yep.
Real quick, I just want to interject, because I think everyone will appreciate this. So in 2019, in fact, if anybody has watched the Desert Ultra documentary, you'll have seen him featured in this. But there was a very charismatic guy named David McIntosh who ran the 2019 Desert Ultra, and great guy, really loved him. But he did the funniest thing that I've ever seen somebody do as far as packing for a race. First of all, he brought an insane amount of food, and he realized very quickly that he had to start shedding that. But one of the things that he brought, and this is not a joke, and there were 2 of them, he had 2 glass jars of peanut butter in his pack. And I was like, David, you got to get rid of that, dude. That is not going to work. And he also had, I don't remember what it was. I don't remember what it weighed, but it was the heaviest pack that I have ever felt at a multi-day race. It was out of control.
I can add to that, because before Adam pulled out the glass jars, I pulled out a real salt and pepper grinder to season his food. So that was a level of what he came with. So you know, bring a luxury, but if you're starting to bring condiments, you may have gone too far. But just quickly, so these are the kind of general questions that everyone's going to answer. We're going to move to a more quick fire at the minute. Kristina, can you remember that just your minimalist, your 55 kilo? Can you remember the kind of pack weights that you were dealing with in each race? I'm guessing you're around the 6 to 8 kilo mark for most of the races.
I just double checked on my computer. So I can say back in 2016 in the jungle where I did my first multi-stage race, my pack was 8.9 kilos without water. And my mountain race pack was 6.1 kilos.
Yeah, which is super impressive considering the amount of mandatory kit that you need for that race. John, can you remember yours for the jungle?
Not the actual. So as far as I know, Spencer had scales in his room. His bag weighed 15.5 kilos.
Jesus. Okay.
So I'd say I was closer to like 12, but I don't know exactly where I was. But I had a lot of food.
Yeah. And Adam, you're normally around 8 to 10, aren't you? I know that because I've just ran a lot of miles with you in a bag.
So, yeah. I think I'm closer to 10, usually 9, 10, but probably 10. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your desert pack weight, Kristina? A couple of questions have come in there.
So the first year I did the desert was 6.5, and the second year was 6.3.
Without water.
Without water, yeah.
Cool. That was about mine as well when I ran it. Okay, great. So they were more general questions. We might go back to the group for some others, but what I'll do now is I'll fire questions directly at individuals that I think would be able to answer this. Specifically for certain races that they've done. Kristina, you've directed your own races before and you've been around camp and seen mistakes happen. What are the top 2 mistakes that you see or have seen across the series for people that have never done these things before and people that have done these races before as well?
I think the top mistake is not to hydrate and not to eat. If you feel sick or you don't feel hungry or you don't feel like drinking and you then don't do it, that will punish you. So yeah, I think that's the first thing. Yeah, what's the second thing, you know? Sometimes it can be hard for people to actually sleep, but to rest is really, really important. So don't try to stay up late. Just rest as much as you can. Maybe that's sort of an advice. I don't know if I've seen it that much, but definitely if you feel ill, you know, force yourself to eat and drink.
Yeah, and I can testify Kristina was on the receiving end of an environment in the mountain, experienced yet couldn't get food in or water and had to rely on her experience to get through. I don't think many other people would have. And once you're in that position in these environments, it's really, really hard to recover. The good news is I just had this conversation before with someone that most of the reasons that people fall out of races in the Global Race Series is for things that they could have done differently themselves. So it is that they haven't drank enough water, eaten enough food, or paced themselves correctly. They're the 3 things that it tends to be. You do have sleep and poor decision making. You have all of the other challenges that come with the environment, but those 3 things are definitely 3 things that we see most often. John, this question's for you. Someone's asked, what do you think the kind of metrics would be that they're contemplating whether they're ready or not for one of our races, and they're kind of trying to see, is there a metric that they could measure? Am I ready? Do you think that there's something you can offer?
The answer is no, they're not ready. But like, are you ever ready enough? I mean, are they participating or competing, first of all? So if they're going in there to win it, I think the most important thing going into these races is that something is inevitably going to kick in that you're not expecting. So you have to be ready for that, first of all. I don't think you're ever perfectly ready for something like this. You know, there's always something that, you know, you could do better, or if you had more time, you could get fitter, or you could get faster, or you could spend more time in the mountains, in the snow, or in the heat. I guess the most important pieces would be, I would actually advise that people go and do a full blood panel before doing taking on a multi-stage ultra. If they're coming from a beginner level, I would suggest that they go and do that and make sure that they don't have any underlying health things. I know that sounds a bit extreme, but I don't think you want to go into a race like this with, you know, inferior kidney function, some sort of, you know, liver issues, or some underlying thing like that. I know that sounds a bit extreme, but I would, if someone was genuinely concerned, I would suggest they do that to start. And secondly, then, it's about metrics of, you know, time on their feet. What happens if are they able to move for 3 hours through the hills and hike? Are they able to do 6 hours? Are they able to do 8 hours? I can't give an exact figure because I guess it depends on what race they want to enter. But the most important thing that will determine whether you're able to do it or not is your capacity to deal with discomfort. You know, your capacity to get up in the middle of the night when you want to stay in bed and get out there and go for a run at 4 o'clock in the morning with a head torch on, get soaking wet. Truthfully, I can't give a straight answer for that. But I think what's most important is that you're going into it. You know, these are taxing events. You're putting your body through a lot of stress. Make sure that it's in the right position going into it from a blood's point of view. Really, then I would be starting to go down that route of success leaves a trail. What, you know, if you just want to participate, start speaking to people who've done the race before and at the sort of time you want, you know, that you want to do it at, and get those metrics to compare. That would be my thoughts on it. But I'm sure more experienced racers like Kris and Adam would have more to offer.
I think just to add to that quickly, you know, we don't have vetting for our 3 races. We have vetting for the mountain ultra. We ask that you've got some experience. We don't have vetting for a reason, because that exact thing is, when a metric on these things is really tough. We've had people that have come from no experience within 12 months do exceptionally well on our race. We've had people that have come from really experienced backgrounds do poorly. So we know that it's actually about a mindset and application to training and seriousness of all these kind of things, of finding out, researching, and going on that journey successfully, and then delivering when the time matters on the race. So we ask you to fill out a health form to make sure those kind of things that Jon mentions are there, so you can feel confident and comfortable that you're in country and fit and ready to go. And then after that point, it is really tough for us to say if you're ready or not, because it is a lot of physical and mindset preparation in the build up to it. And there's the performance on the days. We've had some people surprise us who, you know, turn up incredibly anxious, feeling like they're not ready, and they go on to be really successful, incredible athletes. So it's really hard to give an exact metric, but Jon is absolutely right that you can't ever be fully ready for one of these things. And that's why we always have a saying of have a strong system, an adaptive plan. Things are going to change and probably not go to the way that you've planned them perfectly. But if you've got a strong system, which all these guys have, because they've managed to get to the finish line of our races, then you will succeed. Adam, I'm going to do this next question for you. They're asking basically about our numbers are relatively small compared to, you know, other races in this field. So if we look at the MDS, that would typically bring 1,200 people out to a race. They're asking, is there a reason for the small numbers? I can say that it's just part of our ethos, but you've been a runner and an RD and kind of experienced that firsthand. What would you say to them about the smaller fields that we have?
Yeah, the biggest thing, well, I guess first of all, in some of the global race series races, the infrastructure of like how we have it set up is such that if you double or triple the numbers, it would start to get a lot more complicated, or in some cases you wouldn't be able to do it just because of like the space. But more importantly than that, we want it this way because we believe that it delivers the best experience. You know, like I've been on, you know, more than one multi-day race, and to me, like I just think the smaller, the right number of people, which is how we have it set up here, is what makes it even more valuable of an experience. And you know, like I haven't done the MDS myself. I probably will one day, but everybody that I talk to, they have different. Some people love it, some people not as much. But what everybody agrees on is that they're all just a number, because you know, there can't be a personal relationship with 2,000 people. But at our race, I know Kris knows every one of your names. Sometimes it takes a day or two to learn them all, but we do know all your names, and we have a personal relationship with everybody. And I think it just makes it that much more impactful and valuable of an experience to say, to like, you know, to come home from a race and say, oh, you know, not only did I like make friends with the people in my tent or the person in my tent, but like I made friends with, you know, everybody at this race. And that to me is what the reason why we do it. It's because it changes the experience and it delivers more of an impactful experience for everybody that's a part of the race. And yeah, we could increase numbers, make more money, but that's not ultimately, at, like Kris said, at the ethos of what we're trying to do. We're trying to deliver an incredible experience to everybody that's part of it and change people's lives. And that's what we do.
Got it. Good answer. Okay, so this one's back up to the group. So this is going to go to all three of you. This is a question that I've saved to the end of this section just because it was always going to be a question. Obviously, our race in the Global Race Series are in extreme environment. So the Ice Ultra in northern Sweden, we've had record temperatures there on that race of -52 on 1 year. The average temperature is typically between -15 and -25. The desert, the other end of the scale, we've had a +52, which was, yeah, that tickled, I think, when it would be the right word to say for that. But the average temperature of that race is between 25 and 35 degrees. The jungle has humidity. It also has altitude at the beginning. And the mountain is constantly at a relatively high altitude and over incredibly difficult terrain. So one of the main features of our races is that the environment is bigger than us. Mother Nature often decides who finishes, and certain years can be tougher than others. But how does someone prepare for these environments when they live in a particular region that might not replicate where they're going? So I'm gonna caveat this with a similar answer to begin with, that no one can be fully ready and everyone on the start line will be similar or in the same position as you. But there are little things that you might be able to do at home. And Kristina, we'll start with you because obviously you've done all four. So what kind of stuff have you done over the last couple of years that kind of got you prepped and ready for the terrain that you're about to go through?
Well, let's start with the preparation for the desert. So I live in Denmark, and it's pretty cold in November, October, November, because it's winter here. So I can't train in the heat outside. So what I did was, so I have a treadmill in my garage. I'm aware not everyone has that, but I installed like would you call that like a heater, like a heat lamp? Do you call it that? In the ceiling. So, you know, it was burning down at my head. So I tried to make my garage warmer. I saw some other people put, what do you call that? The tumble dryer, do you call it that? Like, yeah, because that gives a lot of heat. So if you can put that close to where you're training, you can get a warmer environment. What I also did on my treadmill with the heater on the top, I put like a curtain around, but I also trained in a lot of clothes, like a rain jacket and rain pants. So I kind of, you know, didn't allow my body heat to get out. So I got to feel really uncomfortable and really warm on the treadmill. And I guess you can do that outside as well. Put a lot of clothes on so you get to feel and experience how your body works when you get really warm. Another thing, as Adam mentioned, you know, you can train in the sauna. Be cautious about that because many saunas can be really, really hot and maybe also too hot. So like you would need a lot of water for that. And I would say never train alone in a sauna. But that was something I did for in the desert. For the ice, I, you know, contacted a local like freezer warehouse in the city I live. So twice a week, I got to run with all my equipment in a big freezer. So I got to run round and round from -18 to -30 degrees Celsius. So that was really good to feel how my body reacted to that. Like my first big surprise was when I had 2 layers of gloves on and the outer layer was like big down gloves. How everything is hard to do, How do you take your bottle out of your pocket? How do you drink it? Like everything is really tricky when you have big gloves on. Also, I could test what kind of food works in cold environment. And I think, that's also what you can ask in the BTU group on Facebook, what works, what doesn't work, because you don't want to go to Sweden with food that, freezes and then you can't eat it. So that's a good thing to know prior to the race. Well, for the mountain ultra, we don't have mountains in Denmark. Actually, our highest peak is around 180 meters above sea level, so it can be a little bit hard to be a mountain runner here. But again, I trained a lot on the treadmill, which can elevate, and then you can specifically train hills. The tricky bit is to train the downhill. And I do that in the gym where I do a lot of strength, like eccentric work on the legs. So I train my legs to manage all the downhills. What I also did to prepare for the altitude was I was in Kyrgyzstan 3 weeks before to check out the course and to be in the heights. But I was also lucky to sleep in an altitude tent. I'm also aware that not many people have an altitude tent. I saw that, I think it was you, Jon, you trained in an altitude center. You had some sessions there on a treadmill. So if you can, like prior to the race, actually experience how your body feels and reacts in, let's say, 3,000 meters above sea level, so it doesn't come to you as a shock. And about the jungle, I was pretty inexperienced back then, so I didn't train as specific as I would do today.
Yeah, and I think it's also important with that, Kristina is a great example of someone that takes that preparation as seriously and to the degree that it's needed when you want to win these races. So if there's anyone listening to this going, oh God, I have not been to an altitude chamber, or oh no, God, I haven't got a trailer. Most of the people on the start line will not have that. But if you want to win these races, there's Kristina's and Jon who's in this chat. That's what they're doing because they want to win. So it might be something you want to consider. But Jon, you was training for the Ice Ultra and you lived in Portugal at the time. So that was quite a different temperature, and you'd never been down to that temperature before.
No.
What was your kind of strategy?
So first of all, I think it's important because I felt a little bit intimidated listening to Kristina there. And I've done the races. So look, I signed up to both of these races with about 8 to 12 weeks notice. I got thrown into them, and it is possible to do that. I think what's more important is to get your kit, get comfortable in your kit, know what you're going to wear, but train at times that you don't want to train for durations, be on your feet, get used to repeated efforts, back-to-back, double days. I think that if you are sort of struggling to get the temperature or the altitude piece right, get used to the discomfort of repeated efforts. I think that is more important. The kit list that the BTU crew give you is so comprehensive. The kit will work, and you got to trust in the kit. Get the right brands. Do your due diligence there, and get the right gloves. Get the right jackets. But, it will work. And yeah, it'll be a shock to the system, and things will be different. But you will adapt to that quicker than you expect if you want to be a participant as opposed to win the race. And so I think that's nearly more important for anyone who's like Gen Pop that wants to get out there and like have an effort that they're proud of, but at the same time can't afford to run around in a freezer for half a day. For when I did the Ice Ultra, I got to Sierra Nevada, which is like a 4-hour drive from where I am. Spent some time in the hills there in the cold weather, and it did stand to me a little bit. But truthfully, like nothing prepares you for like running up the side of that mountain and your eyelid freezes closed. Like you can be in, you can do all the prep you want, but that's what these races bring. That's the spice, it's the little bit of stuff that makes the magic, is that you're not prepared for it all. So trust in your kit, get used to the repeated efforts, and trust in your fitness. And that would be my thoughts to most people who, as I say, are participants as opposed to looking for a podium.
The Kristina makes a very good point when she talks about the freezer as well. I'll add in here. We've had lots of you have to be creative, and that creative thinking is what can kind of get you far. So we've had videos of two Spanish guys playing cards in a restaurant fridge, because they lived they lived in Basque country and had never been below plus 20, I think. So they was playing poker, Texas Hold'em, for a few hours each day in their local restaurant's fridge, and they let them sit in there. For the heat, is probably the easiest one to do, sauna training and that kind of stuff. It is definitely going to help. And there's actually the unmentioned thing is getting to the country a bit earlier. If you can get to Sweden a little bit earlier, if you can get to Namibia a little bit earlier, if you can get to Kyrgyzstan a little bit earlier, there is no better acclimatization than being in country. And it's not something you really need to think about until the last month of your prep. Anything that you do now, if you're 6 months out, is not going to work. It's not going to hold true. You might get some experience of just being more comfortable in the heat, but you don't have to do it till close to the time. But I do really want to stress that point, is that yes, take that element seriously towards the end of the race. Your training, your fitness should be up there to the point. Be creative and try and get and replicate these environments where you can, but you will never be able to fully replicate them, and be fine with that, because everyone at the start line is experiencing that temperature for the first time too. So it's very, very hard to replicate what a jungle feels like until you're in it. And each one of these guys will back us up on that. Kristina, you got a point?
Yeah, I just a little tip on the food, especially, like, you can actually test your food for the ice prior to the ice. You can put it in the freezer. It's minus 18 degrees in the freezer. You can also test your bottles by putting them in the freezer. And at the desert, you can put your oven to around 52 degrees, and you can test your food there. I saw some people last year with sweets that got all like, what do you call that, floating, all
they melted into each other.
Yeah, they melted into each other, and they were not able to eat it, but you can actually test it.
Testing food is something that you could do relatively easy by just trying to replicate as much as there. And adding to that, have a vast variety of food in your bag. Try not to pack the same thing, especially if you're in the hotter climates. Palate fatigue is a real thing, and it is harder to eat in the hotter climates. And if you've got the same food, you may find that becomes the most unpalatable thing. I still can't eat flapjacks. And that's from when me and Kimble ran across Britain. I can't eat flapjacks anymore. Just the look of them makes me dry retch, and that's because we just had flapjacks for too long. I'll not mention the nights where we had 8-9 beers before as well, but that was all about recovery, wasn't it, Adam? So what we're going to do is, there's some more questions that are flying in. We're going to quickly fire into just specific race questions. There's been a few that have come in on the ice. So for this one, Kristina and Jon, you will be in the firing line. We will quickly just talk about snowshoes. They're a big element of the Ice Ultra. We're going to flip through each race. So if you're here for the jungle and the desert and the mountain, hold on, we'll get to you. But snowshoes are such a big part of it. How did you test them? How did you get comfortable with them before you arrived in Sweden? No, we'll go Jon first on this one. Jon, what did you do?
I tested mine out in Sierra Nevada. That was the first time I got to try them out. I actually rented a pair as well, so just to get used to the old clunky hingy ones versus the ultralights. So it was a nice way to test them out. I also ran in the sand with them a little bit, just to get that feel for the discomfort or that softer terrain. The biggest lesson I learned about the snowshoes was at the end of the race, when one of the Swedish guys told me I should have put polish on my snowshoes, because my snowshoes froze to my trainers. They got covered in slushy snow and then stuck to my trainers, and it was quite difficult to get them off. But it meant that there was obviously a longer lever on my foot, so it caused my shoe to move a lot more than it should have, which led to loads of blisters. And that was my biggest problem in the whole Ice Ultra.
Yep. Kristina, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was on the beach a lot. So I did my long sessions on the beach with the snowshoes on, and I quickly found out that, like snowshoes comes in one size, and I have small feet, so they were quite big for me. So I found out like my steps kind of like if they were in, how can I say that? I cut the inside of my snowshoes off because it fitted me better. So I only found out, I should do that after I've been training in them on the beach. So if you have sand, train with them on the beach. I also tried to train like on a football pitch, but if it's slightly wet or the mud will attach underneath your snowshoes, and then they will get very heavy, and then you lose all your confidence because then you can't run with the snowshoes. I also tested how to get the snowshoes on really quickly, how to get them off, on and off, on and off, with gloves on, because you don't want to take your gloves off when you're actually at the ice. Yeah, so that's what I did. And you want to make these adjustments during your training rather than do it while you're at the ice. So please don't wear your snowshoes for the first time when you get to Sweden.
Yeah. Jon, you was waving your hand there. Was there something to add?
Yeah, just that Kristina said, the importance of getting used to taking them on and off, and where you're going to put them on your bag. If you want to do a quick transition, somewhere that you can clip them off, so you're not taking a bag off, trying to get them onto the back of your bag. That I did not do, and I definitely regretted not doing more of that. They're tricky to get off when they, when your hands are cold, you're fatigued, and they're covered in slushy, frozen stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and you might want to add like a strapping system on your back. So I chose to put my snowshoes in like directly on the back of the pack. So I put some extra straps on, which added a little bit of weight, but it was worth it. So I could quickly, attach them on and off.
Okay. And then a follow-up question I'll quickly answer has come in about how long people can expect to be in their snowshoes. It depends on the race and it depends on the temperatures, and there's a lot of variables. I always say to people, plan to be in them 90% of the time. And if you get out of them, it's a bonus. There has been years where people have been out of them a lot. There's been years where people have been in them constantly. So if you plan to be in them a lot, it's a nice little surprise when you can get out of them. In the wrong snow or right snow, they can be a lifesaver. So yeah, you do grow to love them when you have the soft snow and have to climb up banks in them. But okay, I'm quickly whipping through final ice question I'll quickly answer is on the night bag. Luxury items are not to go in the night bag. It's just the items that we mentioned. So if you are underweight, please don't put hairbrushes and things in. That would be something that you'd have to carry. We're going to move to jungle. Kimble, we can start tagging you in now. There's been a question that's come in about hammock setup. Now, the good news is we're going to be releasing a video on how you can set your hammock up and some good tips on that. Adam, what would your the question here relates to the kind of completion rate and finish rate of the jungle. So to add some context for those people that may not know, the completion rate technically of our jungle is the lowest, depend on some of the years, and that's because we have some cut-offs in on day 4 and 5. You can still technically finish the race if those safety cut-offs aren't met, but we only had 7 of our near 40 runners make the long course in this last edition because the weather was so brutal and just a combination of factors that made it tough. What would you say, Adam, is the kind of things that people need to prepare for to get to the finish line of that race? Because what they're concerned about is getting there. So what would you kind of, that race in particular, you've seen it from the inside now, what would you be telling them?
Yeah, again, just like all of the global race series, the environment creates a lot of challenges, right? So the interesting thing about the jungles, I feel like it's probably the most varied in terms of, not probably, it's definitely the most varied in terms of how the weather and things change throughout the race. So again, you start up at altitude, you work your way down into the jungle. So the altitude you don't have to really deal with for too long. That's usually not an issue for most people. But then once you get down into the jungle, it can be hot and humid. It can be wet and humid. It can be just wet. The terrain, if it does rain a lot, which it does in some years, the terrain gets much, much harder to handle because it's muddy and slippery, and you're on single track in the jungle running through and trying to maintain your footing, and with a pack it can just be challenging. Like I can remember I was kind of following up some runners in 2019, and there were some sections where I was just hiking, but I'd have to like grab onto a branch of a tree to pull myself up like a little hill to get by. So there's just things like that happen during the race that can make it a lot more challenging. And to that point, I think because the humidity, like I said earlier, that race is always wet. So if it's not raining, it's going to be humid. And so once your kit gets wet, it's going to be wet for the remainder of the race pretty much. So just doing your best to handle that, I think, is a big part of it. Making sure that you try to keep all of your things as dry as you possibly can when you're not using them, air things out when you can. And then, of course, just like at any of the races, foot care is huge. And in a place like the jungle where your feet are going to be wet and it's going to be hard to dry them out, even when you set your stuff out, at the end of the day, it's still not going to dry out the way it does in the desert, for example. You can be in the desert, take your stuff off, put it in the sun, and 5 minutes later, it went from wet to completely dry. That doesn't happen in the jungle. So I think that's a big part of it, is just managing your kit, managing your body, and not letting little problems become big problems.
Jon, you've finished the recent jungle, and you were talking about recovery. It's quite a different beast, the jungle, isn't it, with recovery, because you're in the hammocks, you're constantly in the environment. What kind of things can people do on that? What's the kind of process once people get across the finish line to make sure that they're maximizing their chances?
Well, hydration, before you get off the start line, you're prepping yourself for when you come across a finish line. So your hydration from the night before, you're hydrating, should I say, from the night before. So as soon as you cross the finish line, you're getting ready for the next day. A lot of people want to lie down and, roll around and be in pain and do stuff like that. And I think that you've got a window there where you got to get nutrients in, you got to get water in, you got to get out of the heat. You get, the exposure is huge. Get your hammock set up and get yourself as comfortable as you can. I actually grew to love my hammock. It was like that one constant in a very inconsistent environment where, you've got, once you got into your hammock, it always looked the same. It was that same little pod. And I found for me, the jungle issue this time was mentally, I found it very tough because I was pregnant wife at home and I had loads of responsibilities that I was leaving behind me to go and run through the jungle, and that was playing on my mind. But getting into that little pod, getting away from the the noise, the heat, the whatever else like that, for me was the most important thing to manage my mind. And there's such a big mindset piece to these races. The fear is going to kick in, your self-doubt is going to kick in, aches and pains are going to kick in, and your logical brain is going to want to take over. So having that time where you can focus on what your goal is for the race, focus on getting your mindset where it needs to be, that for me was extremely important, alongside the nutrition piece. I found that due to the heat and the fatigue and all the other components to it, that I found it took me a long time to eat my food, and I was putting in a lot of food. So as soon as I finished, I was mixing up 2 bags of food and like chawing away at it, getting as much of that in as well. So it's a very general question, but I think I really saw the importance of minding myself in the jungle, keeping my cuts and bites and all that sort of stuff clean, my hygiene, my getting to the loo, washing my hands, doing all that sort of stuff. That is extremely important in the jungle. I guess due to the nature of the humidity and the temperatures and all that sort of stuff. So I think, if for me, again, it's always just coming back to recovery, mobilizing your joints, flushing out your calves and ankles, getting your nutrients in, and getting your head where it needs to be.
Kristina, thanks, Jon. You want to add into that now?
Well, I do agree. Like the hydration, get some food in, like have control with your salt balance. So maybe I can share like a tip I have on every stage race. I have my watch. I have an alert on my watch going off every 8 minutes. So every 8 minutes, the first 8 minutes, I have to take 2 sips of water. The next time my alert goes off, I need to take 2 sips of my energy drink with salt in it. And the next alert is to get something to eat. So that's a 24 minutes loop, which, you know, makes sure that I'm always hydrated. I'm always, you know, eating, even though I don't feel like eating, but just like 1 or 2 bites of something. It can be a bar, it can be some dried nuts, well, nuts or dried fruit, anything to make sure that you are drinking and eating all the time. And in the jungle, it's crucial. It's crucial in all the races, but especially in the humidity, but because you may not feel thirsty, but you are losing like a lot of sweat and a lot of salt.
It's important to remember that in the jungle, your body can't regulate the heat effectively. So you are sweating at a rate that is quite deceiving. And because you're wet, you can't tell how much you're sweating because you've been through rivers and all that kind of stuff. So making sure you're dousing your buffs and your hats in every bit of river that you go to, making sure you're drinking. And it's a very similar chain that we see. If people fall out of races, they don't spectacularly go in, you know, no one's a surprise. They degenerate over a period of time. And it starts with feeling a little bit sick, feeling very sick, and not being able to get water and food in. So that's that constant, and there's different variants of it. Kristina's got the 8 minutes. I've seen people that have it every 30 minutes. There's people that have it every hour, just that constant check in on yourself to make sure that, you know, you can get dragged into these things and these beautiful environments. It's just that reminder that you're in a place where your body is being tested and you need to keep propping it up as much as possible. Okay, so sorry if there was a jungle question there. I'm going to move quickly into mountain. Kristina, this is going to fire at you. There was a quick one, just as a reminder, what your bag weight was for the mountain. I don't know if you have to quickly scramble to that screen again. I can't remember, or if you remember what it was.
6.1.
6.1. Okay. I'm just looking for the secondary mountain one. It was about terrain. So we had a little chat about this before the race. The mountain ultra is obviously quite high. But the mention here is what is the terrain like? Someone looked at the average kind of times of what people were taking to get through it. And I think they've come to the realization that people tend to be quite slow through that distance. So can you describe the terrain briefly to the guys so they know what to expect?
Well, most of it is actually not that runnable. Also on the downhill sections, because some of them are so steep and so technical that it is really hard to stay on your feet. But what kind of surprised me was Kyrgyzstan and the mountains is really green. So a lot of grass, but a lot of like bumps, if you call it that, like bumpy grass, if you can say that. But again, the terrain is very different. But I guess if we can say something general, is it's either up or down. But really, really technical. I would compare it to, you know, some of the technical terrain around Lake District. So if you do live in the UK or Scotland, you know, go out on the fells and train there, because I think that is what, you know, reminds me the most of the terrain you see in Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, I think the thing that you said before the call is that you have to constantly be focused. You can just twist a foot, twist an ankle at any point. It's not technical in the sense that you'd need ropes. It's not like sky running that you would need helmets and ropes and things to traverse across knife edge ridges and things like that. But it is just constantly not trail, off-piste, we will call it. Okay, great. And that, I think, because we've only got a couple of people in for the mountain in the call at the minute, there wasn't too much on there. We're going to go to the desert, which is in 2 weeks. Our very own Jenny Hall is running. She's done nothing but training and prep. Adam Kimble's getting his sun cream ready to race direct. I'm already building up serious amounts of FOMO from not being there. Adam, let's bring you in. People are on this call that have got the desert in a couple of weeks. What should they be doing now? It's they're obviously getting ready for their flights and things, but what could they be doing now just to get them ready and prepped?
Probably just worrying about all the things that you haven't done well enough. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I would say the opposite of that. At this point, the hay is in the barn, as they say, at least as they say in the States. And so, you know, like all the work has been done. Now it's just, I would be focusing on the kit, thinking about how you want things to be organized, and really getting that all dialed in so that there's no question marks when you get there. It's like, get there, kit check, pack your bag, and then focus on the race, So at this point, just getting yourself mentally ready. I think that's the other thing too. Kind of, I was thinking about this earlier when Jon was talking, but one of those things where you can do all the different things to prepare yourself for the race. And all of those are really helpful, but at the same time, you have to adjust when you get there. There's no simulating what's going to happen once you get out there. So just mentally trying to get yourself to a place of readiness to take on whatever challenges show up and come your way. And just, it's really just in my opinion, it's just having a flexible mindset to say, okay, I don't know what issues I'm going to have to address, but I'm going to have the mental capacity to be willing to solve all of those problems. So yeah, just focusing on that. And then the other thing that I like to tell all the athletes that I coach going into a big race is, it's kind of a mantra that I've had for myself in the last couple of years, but that is control what you can control. There are far too many things outside of your control in a race like this. And so trying to worry about, over stressing about how hot it's going to be, or, things that ultimately you can't, impact in any way, it doesn't help you at all. So think about the things that you can have control over: your kit, your nutrition, your hydration, the plan that you're going to have going in, and just focus on all those things that you yourself can have an impact on. And when you do that, good things usually happen.
Great. Thanks, Adam. And I think every one of our board or panel members has touched on this in a different way. And we've got an article coming out for those people that are wondering how you might prep for this. We've got an article coming out in the next week or two that kind of covers the basics of what you might do in the first kind of steps to that. And one thing that these guys have discussed in different ways is you never feel fully ready, and that this is the kind of time 2-3 weeks out where you can start doubting yourself. So one of the bits of the article that's coming out, I'll just read it out to you. It's relevant to this discussion. And it's: in the world of ultra running, embracing the art of consistency means understanding that it won't be flawless every step of the way, but it's the unwavering commitment to progress and resilience through imperfection that ultimately leads to success. Okay, so if you're focusing on being consistent and accepting that it's not going to be a perfect run to this thing, you can't perfectly tick every box to be ready for these things, you will be fine. You've just got to be resilient and push through, and that you'll have a family and a network of people around you to be supporting you through this as well. So don't feel, you might be traveling on your own. You might feel like this is a very lonely experience on the way out there, but the second you get on that bus on pickup, you will feel connected to a bit of a community and a like-minded people that are going to get through this with you. So it's just an awesome experience. I am going to finish on one question, and people in this chat can even put it in the chat box if they've done a race with us, they might change their mind, or if they're thinking about doing a race with us. Panel members, if you were to, assuming that you've not done a race with us, your first race, okay, you're new to multi-days, you've never done a multi-day, which one of the series would you choose? You're just doing the one. It's your first multi-day. Which one would you choose? Kristina, we'll start with you because, yeah.
I'll do the jungle. I loved it. It was my first multi-stage race. I came into the race with no expectations at all. I took it all in. I started really, really slow. I think I was like the end of the pack on day 1 and day 2 in the start. For me, I would like, the jungle is still my favorite. It is.
What about you, Adam?
What do you think, Kris? I gotta say desert. I know I'm biased, but the reason why is it sounds silly, I guess, but I've always loved running in the heat, and I've always done well at it. There's just something. I think I might have said this exact thing to you before, Kris, but one of the things I love about the desert is there's a desolate beauty to being in a desert. There's just, like you look around and that all you see is the same thing. And there's something that's like really, really beautiful about that. And yeah, so I've always been drawn to desert races for that reason.
Right. And Jon?
I'd go back to the ice straight away because I feel like I just still have a bone to pick with there. If I'm
We'll see
honest,
Jon.
inexperienced, ambitious.
We'll see Jon in the next edition. I have a feeling.
There you go. I loved it.
Well, look, guys, I feel like there's a lot of information that's been passed out tonight. I'm hoping that people are feeling, that right amount of anticipation and nerves and eagerness. I'm hoping if you're kind of hovering over sign up buttons, that some of this information is going to tilt you into an awesome path with us. If you are signed up, and that barrage of information has made you think and made your brain purr with loads of ideas of preparation, that's exactly what we wanted. And if you're here, not signed up to a race, but have done races with us before, what you're doing, get on one. What you're doing, mooching around these calls for tips, get on a race. So thank you all. We've managed to get it wrapped up on time as well, which is amazing for me. But if you do have any follow-up questions, these guys are always happy to talk about the BT races. So Adam's going to be busy in a desert, as is Jenny, but you can fire questions into team at beyondtheultimate.co.uk. You can find Jon and Kristina and Adam separately for coaching if that's something that you're interested in, or you can just contact us for generic questions and we'll answer at any time. But thank you for spending the evening with us. You guys are on the desert in a couple of weeks. Good luck. I'll be tracking you. And we'll see all of you guys on a trail sometime soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Guys.
See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.